Welcome to Warchant TV, and today let's talk about TV ratings and what a juggernaut Florida State has been in this department in 2023. The Noles are making it clear that they are a dominant force when it comes to TV ratings. Just last week, the Seminoles had 2.09 million viewers versus Wake Forest and now have over 30 million cumulative viewers this season. That is a lot. Let's face it, ratings are about bringing in revenue to the networks and, of course, trickling down to the conferences like the ACC. And FSU's been carrying the load for most of the conference when it comes to generating this much needed revenue. This is something that Michael Alford made very clear to the world when he went public with FSU's displeasure over the ACC's revenue distribution earlier this year. Now FSU is back to its winning ways, and even though it was going crazy in generating TV ratings and revenue, even when it was down the last couple of years, now this untenable revenue generating disparity between ACC and almost the entire conference has only gone wider. The numbers from 2023, frankly, are staggering through the first 9 weeks so far. FSU Senior Associates Communications Director Derek Satterfield shared a few more details on a recent tweet from Florida State that talked about the massive ratings bonanza that FSU has been on lately. Part of it, he pointed out that, the 30,830,000 total viewers so far, and these are on rated network games, are more than double the next highest ACC team. Think about that. FSU is generating more than double the amount of TV ratings and likely the revenue from TV more than any other team in the conference. And imagine any business where one salesperson is generating twice the sales of anyone else on the staff, gets paid the same salary, and gets no commissions. And is probably also putting twice as much of their own personal expenses to help generate that revenue and getting none of that in return. Plus, you have several on this hypothetical business. You got a few on the staff that are doing absolutely nothing for the business, and they're just sitting around collecting paychecks. I see you, Syracuse, BC, Virginia, Wake Forest, and Georgia Tech. I'm talking to you. On all the rated games on ABC, FSU has generated 11.44 million viewers. Now that's more than these are ABC games. That's more than any other team in the country on that network, not just ACC, any country. It just shows you again that FSU is a major national player when it comes to generating TV ratings and revenue. Hello, SEC, are you paying attention? Now, to give a little deeper dive, this is what I want to do. I gave some bigger numbers, and I think to really put this in the right perspective, you need to do a little deeper dive by going week by week, how FSU stands and what some of the other games involving ACC teams, what have they generated in terms of TV ratings. So let's go through this quickly, one by one each week from last week, week 9 in the college football season, all the way to going back to week 1 when FSU played LSU. So let's start this past week, week 9, FSU against Wake Forest. Obviously not a huge national matchup. Wake not matchup. Florida State still generated over 2 million viewers in that game. Notre Dame, which is a huge national product, maybe the biggest in college football, had a little less against Pitt at 1.89 million viewers. So let's look at two top 20 ACC teams. How about that? How about Duke and Louisville, two top 20 teams? Surely that's going to bring in a lot of viewers. Nope. 982,000 viewers for that game. Well less than half of FSU Wake Forest. All right, let's move back to week 8. And let's look at that. That was the FSU Duke game. So Duke was rated, so this was a little higher profile game, but obviously Duke is not a household name by itself, does not generate much unless it's on the hardwood. So that was the number 3 overall game in the nation at 4.08 million viewers. Only Ohio State, Penn State, and Tennessee, Alabama generated more viewers that week. Well, let's look at Virginia, North Carolina, which was the next highest rated ACC versus ACC game. Well, remember, North Carolina was ranked number 10 at the time, had a major Heisman candidate in the game. So it's not like people tuned off, and that generated only 788,000 viewers. It tells you that ACC versus ACC, unless it involves FSU and maybe a Clemson team that's playing well, is just simply not going to generate anything in terms of TV ratings. All right, let's go back to week 7. Florida State versus Syracuse, another not very highly profile game against a not great opponent. Still well over 2 million generated in that lopsided matchup. All right, well, let's look at number 14 and undefeated Louisville at the time playing Pitt, and that was another huge upset game. So nobody was tuning off that game. Yeah, 569,000 viewers. Yeah, that's almost a quarter of what FSU generated against Syracuse. Sorry, guys, you're not pulling your weight. Week 6, FSU versus a 2-4 Virginia Tech team. Certainly that can't generate much in revenues. Wrong. Over 3 million viewers for FSU Virginia Tech. That was the highest rated ACC versus ACC game. Again, most of the weeks that's the case. Almost every time ACC versus ACC, FSU is the top one. Well, let's look at another one. Let's look at Syracuse versus an undefeated North Carolina team. Yep, 987,000, less than a third of FSU versus a lousy opponent that week. Week 5, jumping to that. FSU is bye that week, so unfortunately they could not win the ratings war that week. They still almost did because let's look at Virginia and Boston College. Yeah, okay. 367,000 viewers that week. Sad for Virginia and BC. But you say, okay, you know what? That's probably normal for, an okay ho-hum ACC, matchup. Well, put this in a little perspective for you. Nevada versus Fresno State. Yeah, that drew more viewers. How about Temple versus Tulsa? Yeah, that drew more viewership. I mean, it just goes to show you when lower echelon ACC teams, how much weight they carry in the TV market, which is effectively nothing. Games like that show that. It's over and over all season long when these lower echelon ACC teams play each other. It's a complete nothing burger in the TV ratings market. All right, week 4, that was the big FSU Clemson game. Of course, that drew a lot of viewers at 6.71 million, and that was a noon game. Even though Clemson was down, they were, for some reason, unranked at the time. That still outdrew a top 15 Ole Miss Alabama game. Yes, 2 ACC juggernauts. It outdrew them. They had only 4.61 million. Those are 2 top 15 SEC teams. Oh, let's go. Let's look at some ACC games that week, too. It's kind of fun. Miami, of course, the Hurricanes. Even though they play a lousy opponent, they're the Canes. People want to tune in, right? Nope. 353,000 viewers. That's sad. I guess that carries over from what we see in the stands at home Miami games. How about Georgia Tech, Wake Forest? Yeah, you guessed it. That's not a great win either. 332,000 viewers. That was the lowest rated that I could find ACC versus ACC matchup this season, at least in terms of the games that were publicly disclosed on major networks. When they're on networks like ACC Network, they don't usually disclose those ratings for us, so we don't know what those are. I'm sure there were lower ratings than that one, but that's pretty sad right there. Week 3, Florida State at Boston College. Remember, Boston College has just came off a narrow victory. They're 1-1, a narrow victory against Holy Cross. So nobody knew this was going to be a close game in the second half, as it was. Still, 3.48 million viewers for that game. So that's a heck of a ratings bomb for Florida State in week 3. So let's look at Wake Forest. How did they do on their own against Old Dominion? 324,000. Wasn't Wake in the offseason bragging about its ratings and how much following it has? Yeah, right. NC State versus VMI. I know that was a big one. NC State, I mean, they've got a passionate fan following, don't they? 205,000 watching that game. I can't believe that even covers the cost of producing the show. It can't. They have to be losing money on games like that. So you wonder why Disney does not want to pay more money to the ACC. Well, it's stuff like that. These teams that just generate absolutely nothing in these games not involving FSU or Clemson. How about week 2? FSU Southern Miss. Now, that was on the ACC network, so we do not have the publicly disclosed TV ratings for that. But I'm sure whatever it was, it outdrew Virginia James Madison. Yeah, 119,000 for Old Virginia and George Madison. That is the lowest rated game I saw publicly disclosed involving an ACC team again. There's no way that covered the cost of production. That was a loss for Disney on that one. Purdue versus Virginia Tech. At least you had a Big Ten team in that one. Yeah, 294,000. Not great. So last one, week 1, we're finally down to that. Florida State LSU, we know 9.17 million for that matchup. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. ESPN has to be looking at these games when FSU plays a viable opponent, the crazy monstrous ratings it's generating. That's got to be something. Now let's discount, and maybe it's not fair, but the artificially generated Coach Prime nonsense with the highly rated Colorado games early in the season. That was just complete nonsense. So let's talk about real games involving the real teams that were organically generated. This was the third highest rated college football game of the season so far. Only Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Penn State, Ohio State edged out this game in terms of ratings. And those games were just a couple 100,000 more than FSU, LSU. So huge props for FSU getting those kind of monster numbers in that game. Here's why I did all this, to look at this, to conclude something. ESPN's not idiots. They look at these numbers. They know ratings equate to revenue that keeps them afloat, allows them to pay this money back to the conferences. And they have to be salivating at the prospect of FSU playing in the SEC. They're going to generate these double what FSU is generating these ACC matchups, the 2, 3, 4, 5 million each week. If they're playing an SEC opponent, that has to equate to a lot more revenue. Don't give me all the carriage rights nonsense and multiple teams in the states and all that stuff. When Florida State plays, people watch. And when they play a good opponent, they watch in huge numbers. That means a lot of money to ESPN, a lot of money to ABC, Disney. That's got to be carrying a lot of weight this offseason. And FSU continuing to just create this huge gap of what it generates versus the rest of the league. It's just not sustainable. So I'm hoping FSU, the ACC and the networks look at this thing, and this is some impetus to get FSU out of the conference. And I'll say one thing to conclude: FSU is putting themselves in prime position, if it continues this fabulous season, to push strong for a move to get out of the ACC, because I think the money's going to almost add up if Florida State's able to get out of the ACC and play in the SEC or the Big Ten. So unbelievable for FSU and what they've done ratings wise. Keep it on Warchant TV. Hopefully you like this video and several others we have here. So hit the like button below if you like content like this. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. You'll see that subscribe button underneath this video. You click on it, hit the bell so you get notified when we have items like this or live shows, Jeff Cameron shows, Sunday Smash, pregame, postgame shows, recruiting chats. All those kind of things are available to FSU fans on here. So from Warchant TV, have a good one.